The trend of monsters and villains in Power Rangers not making the cut continues and never before seen Power Ranger Monsters Part 6. In this video, we'll be covering monsters that never appeared in Power Rangers Time Force. Now, Time Force is a fan favourite season of mine, and it's one of my favourite seasons. I'm a fan of the suits and how they look, I love the characters and the story arcs they go through, and its Super Sentai counterpart I haven't completely seen, but as I'm writing this video I'm slowly binging through the series, so I can understand why some of the monsters were skipped and didn't make the cut. But I've noticed while watching Time Ranger, I also noticed that Time Force kind of adapted most of Time Ranger to a T, only changing a few things to suit the narrative for kids. And I know I've criticised Samurai and Super Samurai for doing the exact same thing, but I feel like with Time Force it was done better. Mostly because the tone and story are completely different. Time Force is a story about time travel and destiny and stuff like that, while Samurai was just copying Shinkenger but Americanizing it, adapting it to a T, and sort of westernizing the whole samurai thing. And it's like I mentioned earlier, I like Time Force because of the characters and the story arcs they go through. Samurai and Super Samurai tried to have their characters go through story arcs and development, but because of how the tone was handled for the show, it fell very, very flat and the characters ended up being very two-dimensional. Now, one day I might go back and revisit Samurai and Super Samurai and see if it still holds up, but that's a story for another day. But if you want to watch Time Ranger for yourself, like I usually say in these videos, you can find Time Ranger on Shout Factory's website where you can watch it for free, or on Tubi TV. Or you can buy the DVD from Shout Factory. Remember to always support the official release whenever you can. That way in the future, we can see more tokusatsu get official releases. Now, once again, special thanks to Power Rangers Wiki who has this info up on their website, because that way I can organize this video and find the info to make this video for you guys that you enjoy. So, with Power Rangers Time Force, there's roughly about 10 monsters that didn't make the cut from Time Ranger. Now, if I do my math correctly, that's the most amount of monsters we've covered on this series. And I'm sure once we get to the Neo Saban era with seasons like Megaforce and Super Megaforce, they'll be the new contenders for most monsters never seen. Especially Super Megaforce once we get there. But we'll cover those seasons eventually within a few months. Don't worry, I know that you guys are really excited for me to cover the Neo Saban era moving forward, and I am too. So, there was 10 monsters that never made the cut. 6 of those monsters were in movies. That's right, 6 of those monsters were movie monsters. So, I got really curious to watch the crossover movie between Go-Go 5 and Time Ranger, because if I watch the movie, I can understand why these guys were cut. And the wiki claims they were cut due to movie cost, which makes sense. But I sat down and watched the Go-Go 5 vs Time Ranger movie, and it's one of those movies where old villains they've defeated come back, they reuse the suits, and they're like related to the villain they've defeated, so that's why they're so powerful and they need to team up with the previous Sentai team to defeat them. So it's one of those movies, so I can totally understand why the Time Force and Lightspeed Rescue team up was all original footage. So with that extremely long intro out of the way that probably has lost all your attention and you're about to click off this video and watch something else, let's talk about the monsters that never made the list. First up is Sniper Reiho. This character went unused due to its overuse of a sniper rifle, but I gotta admit, her Monster of the Week plan was pretty interesting. She had a bullet that could pierce the Rangers' suits, and she had a plan to kidnap someone and lure out the Rangers so she'd be in sniping distance. I gotta admit, that plan was pretty solid. Next up is Counselor Zekaha. This guy was skipped because of either time reasons or too much unmorphed Sentai footage, or probably both. So, this character is really wacky. He's a mental counselor gone bad, using some kind of tech to damage the patient's brain, forcing him to come back and make him even more money. But once they were broke, he'd imprison them and run experiments on them. So if they ever did adapt this character, I wonder how they would have handled it. This character does seem really dark, but if they did give it the kitty glove treatment, I do wonder how they would have handled this monster in the end. Okay, so if you've been keeping up with this series or you're brand new here, one of the many reasons why monsters get skipped is because of gunplay, because guns are bad, and I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here, but I didn't know this until I started rewatching the Spider-Man animated series, but all the tanks in that show and all the guns in that show are made into frickin' laser beams. But anyway guys, Arm Steel Abandon skipped because of guns. Guns are bad, so they skipped them. Okay, here's an interesting one. Hell's Gate Prisoner skipped because of involving Japanese people getting hit, and the scenes were really brutal. Now, understandable, some monsters are too violent to show, but Power Rangers in the past has never really had a problem editing footage or working around it if they can, depending on the situation. But I guess this was one of those times where they couldn't really film their own stuff, or they couldn't find a way around it, so I can understand why this guy was skipped in the end. Now there are several more monsters that never made the cut completely. Bodyguard Hybrid, Gourmet Pyromaniac Vincent, and Beautician Domamilo. Now, I can understand why Bodyguard Hybrid was skipped, because the Time Rangers get tricked into getting really drunk, and that wouldn't fly on a kids show if we saw Wes and Friends wasted. But, do you remember Trumpet Top from MMPR? Or should I say Tofu Hermit if you've seen Dairanger, because I'm going to talk about one of my favourite filler episodes in Dairanger. So, in episode 12 of Dairanger, there's a monster called Tofu Hermit that makes everyone drunk. So it's up to Kazu, our Yellow Ranger, who is the master of the Drunken Fist technique, to stop him. This causes Kazu to have a drinking contest with the monster, and I'm not going to spoil any more of it. Go check it out, you'll love the episode. Alright, back to the monsters. So we've got Gourmet Pyromaniac Vincent. Fuck, that's a mouthful to say. A monster that was skipped because it spent too much time in its human form, so that's understandable if they didn't have enough footage of him. And lastly, Beautician Domamiro. And looking at this monster, yeah, I can see why it was skipped. I know we've had goofier looking monsters in Power Rangers before, like Andros in the Storaway, or whatever that episode was called, but this one, I don't even know what to do with it. So, those were the monsters that never made it into Power Rangers Time Force, and those monsters, even though most of them were movie villains, had some interesting reasons why they were cut. I mean, they were very different from the other monsters we've had before, where they weren't very scary, they weren't very religious, they pretty much had the same reasons why we've covered before, but their designs were all really unique and interesting, I will say that much. But which one of these monsters were your favourite, and if you were able to adapt them into Power Rangers, how would have you adapted them into the show? I'd love to hear your thoughts and theories and speculations, or fanfic on how you would write these monsters into the show. So, with that said, I'm going to bring this video to a close. Special thanks to all the members such as Swagger4 and Andrew McCoyle. Big special shout out to the Power Bunny, who's a $30 member. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video, because next month we'll be covering Gaoranger, the last Power Rangers season in the Saban era, or the first of the Disney era, a lot of people call it. I don't know, it's debatable. So, with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Peace out, take care, have a wonderful day or night, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!